Good evening and welcome to another edition of awakentheworld.ca. My name is Garhen, and this evening we're going to be talking about a blog post that's entitled Time Stands Still, We Move. Now, time is one of my favorite subjects actually, and the reason it's one of my favorite subjects is that it simply doesn't exist anywhere else except in this relative, this 3D dimension, this physical realm. It's the only place it exists. And it exists as a concept. It's just a magical construct that our egoic mind, which can only accept things in a linear fashion, can understand. It's just beyond it, and it's beautiful. Now, when you start living from a place beyond the mind, the reality of time in this physical dimension and what it truly can do and what we can do within it becomes a little more obvious. And I want to talk a little bit about that tonight. Take an example, our current measure of time, and note that we have changed them throughout history, okay? But really what we've done is we arbitrarily have taken our measurements of time from the celestial bodies we see around us. So we decided to call the rotation of the Earth around the Sun 1 year, and then we divided the day between the time the sun rose and then came around and rose yet again. And when, of course, it set, it became night. And then we divided these up into segments and tried to standardize everything. And one of the unfortunate side effects of that is, of course, that was trained into us literally at a genetic level, okay? That time is linear and everything progresses in these neat little tiny segments. And that's not true. And I'm going to give you a really simple example. If you're an astronaut on the space station, you have to consistently reset your clocks because time up there doesn't run as fast as it runs down here. Now, you say, how is that possible? Well, time is linked to what we call gravity, and we don't really understand gravity yet. I mean, you ask any physicist for an honest answer about gravity, and the bottom line is all we have is theories, and that's it. Now, I'm going to pose something a little different to help understand what's actually going on, okay? One of the easiest ways to imagine what's closer to the truth is the following, and we're going to start out with the illustration that the ego accepts and lives by. So imagine you have 500 sheets of paper and your lifespan is 500 days. You're going to line those pieces of paper up side by side in a linear line, all 500 of them, from one end to the other. And every day you're going to pass through one piece of paper. Now, once you start onto the second piece of paper, that first piece of paper has been lost forever. And you can't see past the piece of paper you're on to the third piece of paper. You're making an assumption it's there. This is the illustration that best suits the way that we currently view time. Each piece of paper is the same size, the same number of hours, has a day, has a night. Very linear, very chopped, cut and dried. Can't go back, can't go forward. You're right here. And on the one hand, in some sense, and this is the, we live in a physical universe. Everything is a dichotomy. You cannot have anything without a dichotomy. You can't have hot if you don't understand cold. You can't have up if you don't have down. You can't have big if you don't have small. And it's all relative. So we're going to go back to our sheets of paper. Now, there is a part of that that's true, and that's the dichotomy, okay, is you are present right here, right now, as your higher self. It is observing what the present moment has to offer it right here, right now. That doesn't mean that there's more that there's not more accessible than that, because there is. The egoic being, of course, is lost in trying to reclaim the past and worries about the future. And of course, it feels helpless in that because it always is thinking in terms of linear time. Closer to the truth is this. If we took those 500 sheets of paper starting at the end and piled them all the way back up again to the beginning, we'd have our 500 sheet sheaf of paper. And now we're going to squeeze it down to the size of roughly one piece of paper. And we're going to stand in the middle of it. As long as we don't move, we have access to all of the sheets. As soon as we begin to move around, however, we move through those compressed sheets of paper, all within the same time frame. I hope that helps illustrate it a little bit more for you. You really got to get the picture in your head, okay? And this is closer to the truth. If you were to look at the universe in terms of how time came about from a creative essence point of view, okay, what we call gravity, we could call rivers of conscious awareness, rivers of the conscious essence of the universe, that pregnant womb of creation flowing in a beautiful undulating dance. And there are places in those rivers where consciousness becomes concentrated and celestial bodies are born. At the physical level, gases begin to collect, drawn by what we would call gravity. Another word would be attraction. Love at the sight of itself. Literally, I'm not kidding here. And gathers together, and then comes the cosmic dust, and this begins to swirl and heat up. And over time, planets are born, suns are born. But at a deeper energetic, the finest energetic level you could possibly imagine, what's actually happening is in these rivers of consciousness, eddies are created where consciousness gathers and grows. And a new type of being is born into the physical realm out of that, and we would call it our sun. Never doubt that there isn't the same God consciousness in that sun as there is in this planet. Never doubt that she is a conscious being. Now, we could go on talking about the beauty of this river of consciousness, how it breaks itself down into tiny little streamlets and little oxbows, and everything is created out of that. Everything springs up out of that. We can talk about that, but we're really talking about time, and I don't want to run out of it like you ever could. So within the universe, though, of course, depending on where you are and how you're traveling in and around the various concentrations of conscious awareness on the river of conscious awareness, time has different characteristics. In some, if you're traveling fast enough, time almost stands still for you. While to an observer sitting on Earth, they're going to be old and dead before a year passes of your life. And we would consider that a paradox, but it's not really a paradox when you understand what's actually happening when you travel at that sort of velocity, okay? But that's not really the point of this either. The point is to get a grasp that time is not linear by any sense of the word. That is a construct. Now, I'm not talking about the fact that you have to live by a watch. There are parts of our existence that require us to do just that. I'm quasi-retired, so time doesn't mean as much to me on that level as it used to. But at the same time, I still have obligations. I still have the occasional part-time thing I'm doing, or a project that has to be done, or it doesn't matter. You have to live by a watch in certain areas of your life, and that's okay. The point is to stay detached from the idea that it's actual reality. Have you ever noticed when you're looking at a magnificent sunset and your mind goes still, that time literally disappears? I've had that experience. I was out doing some photography on the ocean. There was a long jetty of rocks leading right out into this bay. And there was a little bit of grass out there, and enough stuff had blown in over the years that there was literally a small tiny island. And I scrambled out there about half an hour before sunset. And the sunset was magnificent across the water. And I just took picture after picture. I never looked up from the viewfinder, the LCD screen. And when I was done, not only had 2 hours passed, but my body was covered in mosquito bites, and I hadn't felt a single one of them. Neither was there a voice in my head, though. It's an interesting link to time, is our own egoic perception of it has an effect on time. We are moving through it. How we choose to move through time determines our perception of time. We're going to talk a little more on this. I'm just going to scan down a little bit more of the article here. Our linear minds cannot wrap around the idea that all events are happening right now. As I talked about in the reincarnation video, they are not your past lives per se. They are the various egoic identities manifested and grown from the higher self in its experiences. And they're all happening simultaneously. And if you haven't seen the video on reincarnation, I sincerely invite you to watch it. It's really good. It talks about my own experiences with it as well. We're out of time, and that's where we're going to leave it at. At the end of the day, though, the purpose of this is to open your eyes to a little larger concept of what time really is, and to keep reminding yourself to remove yourself from the illusion that it's linear. Allow yourself to regain control of time, because you are a time master. As a matter of fact, you are a master of everything. You just don't know it yet. But it's going to become clear. This is Garhen signing off from awakentheworld.ca. Have a wonderful evening, and namaste to all.